Why do we pray? What does it even mean to pray, and why does it sometimes feel like no one is listening? All this and much more are going to be discussed today with my wonderful guest, Father Adam. Father, thank you so much for coming on today. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely, Paul. Thanks for having me here today. And as we get started, you brought up prayer. Is it possible for us to open with such a thing? It's one of my favorite things to do.
That would be wonderful, yes. But you got to start it. So,
okay, can I ask you this? I always like to kind of find out where people are in their day, right? Like, let's pray with what God has on our hearts right now. So I'm gonna put you on the spot, since I'm gonna be put on the spot, I suppose, a little bit today.
There we go.
Let's do this. One thing that was great that happened in your day today, and one thing you're like, this was kind of heavy in my day, and I'll give you something as well, and then we can pray with that.
Okay. When it comes to this was kind of heavy in my day, could it be maybe a thing I've been thinking about?
Absolutely.
Okay, it can't be like a terrible thing happened today, because it wasn't a terrible day,
Sure.
really. One good thing that happened today. All right, whatever. I'll go. We'll go here. Maybe we won't go there. Let me think here. Well, I'll explain later. Okay, one thing that was good today is I finished a commercial production for a company that I've been working for, and they really liked the commercial. That was awesome. So the work I did was good. A thing that's been weighing on my heart a little bit today, especially, was scaling this whole darn thing, this whole podcast, to the level to where I believe it'll be maximally meaningful to the world around me, I should say. So just, hey, are you good enough to kind of do this type of thing? Those thoughts, those self-doubt thoughts were kind of weighing on me a little hard today. So that's maybe the one negative thing, I guess, today.
Awesome.
Your turn.
Thank you. For me, today, yesterday was Mother's Day. So, basically, Mom came to town with my dad. They stayed with me last night. Today was my day off, so I had a great time with my mom and dad. We're hoping and planning for an Italy trip here in a few months, so we're looking forward to that for sure. That's something. I had a great time with Mom and Dad today. And I suppose anything heavy that happened today. What was heavy today? Something that was heavy today, it was a pretty easygoing day. I suppose, you know what? We were trying to get my dad a pair of shoes today, and he was struggling through that a little bit, and so he did pretty well, all things considered. But it's always a difficult time to go get dad a pair of shoes, because we're getting him ready to do some walking to get ready to go to Italy. That's not super exciting for dad to look forward to either. We're getting him going on the hike or on the walking gig. So what I'll do, if this is okay with you, I'm just going to pray for what you asked to pray for there, and I'll offer up what's going on in my life too.
Perfect. Right? Oh, wait a minute. No, you said I admitted feelings of self-doubt, and you told me you couldn't find your dad's shoes.
I'm talking about today. Today was an easy day. Okay. It was my day off, right? So I will. All right. What was today? We'll go, because vulnerability is key, right?
Key, and, yes.
Something today that happened for me, I'm finding myself, as a son, always like, you want to be the best son possible, and just kind of being with mom and dad always reminds me of the areas of growth. Like, Jesus, my mom and dad might not be around forever, they're not going to be around forever. So taking advantage of every moment, not, getting frustrated when something doesn't happen in the way you want it to happen. So my mom and dad, just spending time with them today reminded me, they won't be here forever. And, I just want to, it's sometimes hard to, love them in the way you want to love your mom and dad. Something for whatever, things from the past or whatever, this thing that happened in my childhood wasn't perfect, or that thing that happened. And sometimes we just have to let those things go, right? And so that's why today was good. That's why it was a blessing, because it was one of those days where I didn't hold on to that stuff. I actually just said, you know what, I'm going to just love my mom and dad and spend time with them and enjoy their company today. that was the blessing of it. So, and so that's the struggle for everybody. How do I love people in my life the way I'm called to love them and enter into that? So that was the challenge in that I always feel like people with their parents have to try to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I know Mother Teresa said something along the lines, and it's really true. She said something along the lines of, everyone, you might think you're patient, but you're never really patient until you are patient at home. I've gone to college and I'm like, man, I'm really nice to people. I'm really patient. All of a sudden I go back home and I'm amazed with myself and how quick my temper is with my dad or my sister. So it's like, yeah, family's the ultimate test.
Absolutely.
But it's most important to be patient with your family, especially your parents, right? That's a commandment for Pete's sake.
Amen. It's the only one that we're commanded on that front to do. Yep.
Right.
So I would, if it's possible, can I just kind of give to God what you wanted to give to God, and I'll give to God a little bit with family, and for all the people out there that might be listening, that they might love their family in the way they're called to love their family. Let's pray with it, shall we?
Let's do it.
All right. In the name of the Father, Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. Father in heaven, we thank you for the gift of Paul, for all that you're doing through him. We thank you for his desire to bring forward this podcast and the good work that he did for this commercial today. And Lord, we bring to you his any heaviness of heart as he does this podcast, any inadequacy that he might feel, any area where he might not, where he wants to reach the world for you, and for people to encounter you and to encounter the goodness that this world has to offer. And as always, the evil one can come after us and help us to think we're inadequate, think we're not enough. And so, Lord, I ask that you give him the grace and the strength to know that of his own ability, yes, he is inadequate, but with your ability, with your grace and your strength, he is, and that you might guide him in that, to know that truth today. Lord, I also pray in gratitude for the gift of my parents, my family, especially mom, and for all those moms out there, for people who are struggling today in these times for the loss of a mother, or mothers who might be struggling with the loss of a child, or whatever it is that's going on in people's hearts. Jesus, I bring to you today all these things, my parents in particular. I ask that you bless them, strengthen them, guide them to know the love you have for them. And in this good time we had today, ask that you would help my heart to continue to love them as they're called to be loved, to not grow impatient with them in the times where I might want to be impatient, and to help us to grow in love of one another as we grow in love of you. And Father, we bring all this to you, and we bring all these prayers and intentions to you today. And now we pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Father, Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen.
You know what? That is a first for the Paul Garcia show, and I am honored, truly. And if anyone didn't know that I was Catholic, by the way, they all should. There's a crucifix in every single shot in every single episode. So thank you very much for that.
Absolutely.
But hey, we just prayed. Mm-hmm. What exactly is prayer? It might seem like you're trying to affect the will of God and persuade God to make things happen how you want them to happen.
Yeah.
I want to do good in business, so maybe God help that become reality. Is that what prayer is, trying to persuade God into manipulating reality?
It's actually the complete opposite, right? The first thing I would say, this is like very straightforward Catholic catechism definition, right? A prayer is a raising of the heart and mind to God, right? Which is what we just did, right? Like our days, we raised our hearts and mind to God in that particular way, and thanks be to God for that. But with the will, right? This whole aspect of, man, we human beings like pushing forward with our own will and doing things in the way we want to do it. What I do know about God is there's one thing we don't ever want to have happen. We don't want God's will to change, right? That's the beauty of who our God is. His will is unchanging, right? And so what I want to do is to make my will one with God's will. And so often when we pray, we end up taking the approach of, God, could you make your will one with my will? And that's just like the opposite of what we're trying to do when we pray, is say, God, I know that there's this hard thing going on in my life right now. There's this challenge going on in my life right now. And if you could do this, it would be so much better for me. But God sees the picture so much larger, so much bigger. His will is constantly recognizing that there's something greater for you. It might be time for you to enter into a suffering, right? We talked about family and the struggle to be patient sometimes with family. We can be so kind to people we just meet, right? Because we're trying to put our best foot forward. Like, look how impressive we are when we meet for the first time. But man, the people who we love the most, we expect them to love us and they need to love us. So we end up treating them in such a way like, love me. And no matter what, like they should, we desire that, but we force them to take us the way we are. And so many times, like where we're just like, God, could you just help me to change? As opposed to, I don't know, sometimes I joke about this, right? I'll say this. I don't know if priests are supposed to say this or not, right? But the fact of the matter is, I think we think this a lot of times, right? That when we're at bad spots in our life, when we're just overwhelmed and we're frustrated and we're burdened and we look at everybody around us as like, they're the ass, right? Like these people would just stop being that way. I would be so good, right? Sometimes when we have to look out there and we see all if everybody around you tends to look like an ass or feel like an ass, perhaps they're not. Perhaps it's me, right? And that's, I think, something so important for us to be considering. Like if there's something not at peace in me and it's coming out on everybody all around me, that's what I'm asking God. God, clearly there's something not going right within me right now. Give me the strength to get over myself, get past myself, whatever I'm frustrated about, because there's nothing that these people around me can do to make me feel the way that I feel. Yes, they have an impact on that, but they can't force me to do that, right? Take it, for example, the folks at Auschwitz, some of the people who survived the prison camp at Auschwitz, right? The way that they got through that is they understood they can take everything from me, right? They can make me miserable. They can torture me. They can do everything, but there's one thing they cannot take from me, and that is my attitude, the way that I am entering into this. And how do you do that? The only way, I believe this to my core, the only way you can get past something as bad as a prison camp at Auschwitz or any other terrible thing that's going on around us, I don't have that power within me, but there is one who can give me the grace and the strength to be able to do that. God, I don't understand why I'm in the prison camp at Auschwitz or why these people around me are all making me so angry or frustrated or bitter or whatever it is. I don't know why that's happening, but I do know that by myself, I don't have the strength to overcome that. But with you, God, your will is strong enough to overcome my will of being irritated and grumpy with all these people right now. Give me the grace to receive that.
A college kid moves home to be with their family, and their family just irks the heck out of them. You're saying maybe it'd be a good idea to pray to God, say, hey, what is it they should say to God in that moment?
Yeah, I think, right, when I don't know, your college roommate, right? The college roommate is doing the thing that oh man, when this college roommate does this thing, drives me nuts. Like, it doesn't have to be this long, articulate prayer in that moment. Jesus, I'm about ready to lose my mind on my roommate. Please give me the grace and the strength to love him as he's called to be loved. Simple enough.
Which
right?
would be a very difficult thing to say, even if in your head you've got to be, I don't know what you have to be, but you have to maybe some people might say you might have to be a little holy to, in the midst of your anger and frustration and resentment even, to say something along the lines of that. But
it takes practice, right? Okay. Right? Like you have to start somewhere.
Traditional, modern, or rustic. Whatever your home interior vision may be, you can count on the professionals here at Gravel Lane Design Studio to make it a reality.
From bathrooms and kitchens to laundry rooms and mudrooms, our talented team of designers specializes in custom designs, including Amish-made cabinetry, countertops, showers, closets, and shelving that embody your personal style, creating the space you desire with the function you require.
Based out of Eureka, Illinois, Gravel Lane is a locally owned business that takes pride in providing you with a delightful family-like experience.
Give us a call and we'll pair you with one of our expert designers that will meet with you to discuss your vision.
Together, we will view your space and take measurements, explore materials and samples, and look over personalized digital renderings so you can see it for yourself.
And only once you see a design that you truly love will we begin building your dream room.
Turn your home's interior from ordinary to extraordinary when you call Gravel Lane Design at 309-383-0000. 888-888-0090.
Or send us a message through our website at gravellanedesign.com.
Gravel Lane Design Studio. Quality craftsmanship.
It takes practice, right?
Okay.
Right? Like you have to start somewhere, right? If I went to the gym to shoot baskets right now, if I went over to whatever gym we wanted to go to, started shooting, I would probably go about 1 for 10 from the 3-point line, right? But if I went to the gym for the next week and shot 100 shots a day for the next week, I'm going to get to probably by the end of the week, I'm 3 out of 10, right? And I'm the virtue is building of becoming a better shooter. In the same way, right? Like in the moment of frustration with another person, the first step towards getting better at that is ultimately like knowing that I'm feeling the way I'm feeling, right? Like I'm feeling angry right now, right? Like if we got to catch ourselves there, I feel my dander raising. I feel like I'm getting frustrated in this moment. In that moment, if we can catch that, now we can actually take it to the next step. But at first, they have to recognize that I'm doing it. If we just like, it's out there. Holy cow, we already did it. We didn't even think about it. That's the growth and virtue that happens first, catching ourselves, right? And recognizing, I feel something going on inside of me. If I don't like take a second to feel the things that are going on inside of me, they just keep flying out there, and we keep like just dead bodies laying all around us because we keep letting our anger, our frustration, or whatever being, and we are, because I'm not at peace inside of me. Now everybody around me is not at peace. I've made their lives all like, you notice that in your life? Like when you're at a bad spot, like we always say, misery loves company, right? And those kind of things. When I feel miserable or frustrated or irritable or whatever it is inside of me, we want that to be known. That's what does a baby do, right? Like when a baby
when they're uncomfortable, they yell, they make noise.
And they want, because I feel miserable. And so until I don't feel miserable anymore, all these people around me who can help make me not feel miserable anymore, please help me not feel miserable anymore, right? And that's what they do. And we can do that when we're a kid. We can do that. We see it with teenagers. Sometimes I joke, right, with my the students who come and serve at Mass for me or whatever it is, and they'll come back there and they just look miserable. They show up and they're like, you could see like, my goodness, this is a bad day for this kid, right? Or whatever's going on. And they do that to their parents and all those kind of things. Like they come to mom and dad, and they, if a teenager doesn't start to get that in check at some point, like where I feel miserable, well, they're going to make mom's and dad's life miserable all around them in that moment, because they're miserable inside, and I'm going to do whatever I can. These people need to help me not feel miserable anymore. And then we go to adulthood, right? Husbands, wives, fathers, children, right? When a dad comes home from work and he's had a terrible day, he's overwhelmed, he's tired, he has nothing left to give, and then kids are the kids are doing what they're doing, they're being loud or yelling or whatever it is. Dad brings all of that home, and he has to recognize, like, okay, this is all, like, if we don't ever catch that, it's almost as if we can't ever get to a spot where we can say, God, like, give me the grace to be able to do that. So we have to catch that like human side of it first, right? Like the human aspect of like, this is the way I'm feeling right now. And man, so we don't like talking about feelings. You noticed even me at the beginning, I was like, you shared this like depth of your heart, right?
Yeah.
And I was like,
on camera.
Yeah. And then in that moment, I was like, Lord, I don't really have anything that heavy that happened. Today was a really easy day. Most every day as a priest, there's something heavy, but this was my day off. So it was kind of an easy day. But we struggle sharing that, right? And I don't know, maybe this is a thought. I was like, I'm a history nerd. I was a history major in college, and I do believe the greatest generation, it would be like my grandparents' generation. It's incredible. Like the way, like they went through World War II, they went through the Korean, like many of their siblings and loved ones were killed in the middle of a war. And yes, we have that a little bit in our time, but almost everybody was affected by that stuff in some way or another in those days. And what those men would do, they'd come back, like my grandfather, who was a flamethrower in the middle of World War II. Those are the people who get aimed for, right? Like it's a blessing. It's incredible that I'm even here today, because I get a flamethrower shot, that explodes the men all around him. So what they do is they've witnessed these things that inside of them, and they come home. Why did they create like VFWs and American Legions and all of these kind of things? They did it because they couldn't share what was inside of them, what was with all these other people who had not experienced it. And so they go to the VFW or the American Legion, and they spend time talking with their buddies, sometimes probably drinking a little bit more than they needed to drink, because that's how they medicated themselves. And that was the beauty of their generation, this intense, like beautiful gift that they bring to the world. However, what I think many men in that generation never did is they never dealt with what was going on inside of them in a way that was going to bring them the peace that they could, which is why they a lot of times turn to excessive drinking of alcohol. That's why anyone turns to excessive. Anytime we drink too much or get involved in drugs or whatever else it is, or we eat too many chocolate chip cookies, right? Like it's I want to feel good. My misery that I feel inside of me, I want to make it feel good. And until we fix that, something goes awry, and we make everybody else miserable around us until that feeling inside of us is worked on. And I believe there's only one way that can truly be worked on, and it's from the big guy up top. So
you say there's a miserable kid, and he's making his parents and everyone around him miserable, and it's terrible for everyone, and no one likes him. Also, you didn't mention that part, and no one's going to like you, and then you're going to become more isolated. Yeah. We talked about Jordan Peterson before we started recording, and he talks about this in depth in his book, the importance of raising kids that you like to be around as a parent, because if you don't like them as a parent, no one's going to like them. Yep. No one's going to want to be around them. They're going to be isolated. They're going to be left alone with their own darkest thoughts, and no one's going to tell them that, hey, that's a dark thought and you shouldn't think it. So many bad things can come about if you continue to make people around you miserable. So my question is, how do we, as say a parent or maybe as a friend, help someone who's making everyone miserable?
Yeah.
Help them to not be that, to be maybe more of a light than they are a light sucker.
No, that's beautiful. The way you said that. I think the biggest way is to, I always have to start with God, right? Like that's the key. We have to show them that there is a benevolent being that exists out there that cares about you unconditionally, right? As much as we human beings try to love each other unconditionally, there is a being that loves us in a way that we cannot imagine being loved. And we are when we know we are a beloved, teach them that they are beloved sons and daughters more than anything else, because this world's going to tell people all kinds of identities to attach themselves, right? Like I'm a chain smoker, or I'm a boy that isn't a good, and I feel like I'm a girl, but I'm in a boy's body. All these identities that we attach to ourselves in this world come from not knowing our truest identity as a beloved son or a beloved daughter of the Father in heaven. If we know that identity, we don't fall into all of this stuff of who the world tells us we think we are. So I think that's the first key. And in order to help people to get there, like that, knowing that God is there to support us through that first and foremost. The second thing is that we have to know other people are there to support us as well. I always put it like, what is joy? Like my people at the church are so sick of hearing this, but might as well hear it again if any other are watching. Joy, Jesus, others, yourself, right? If you want to have joy in your life, Jesus has to be first in your life. Others must also be present in your life, and you must be last in your life. Like we want to turn that upside down and put ourselves first. And we put ourselves first, we end up getting consumed with ourselves. This is the only way to see the world. And if everybody would just see the world, I want to see it the way I want to see it. That starts when we're children, right? Like when we're little babies, like if everybody would just make me happy, and if we don't ever get to the spot where we say, there's a benevolent being out there who loves me more than I could ever imagine, then we continue to just grow in cynicism, in bitterness and frustration, and then the need for other loved ones in our lives to let us know that. So the key is support each other, Support each other through hard things. Everybody knows they have to do hard things. Everybody knows things inside of them need to change. But in order for those things to change, we need to know that other people are going to help support us through those hard things.
Fairbury Furniture is Central Illinois' premier furniture store. This family-owned business offers a vast selection of premium furniture items from all of your favorite brands, including Sealy, Best Home Furnishings, Leather Italia, Tempur-Pedic, and Ashley, just to name a few. And right next door to their gorgeous 7,000 square foot furniture showroom, you will find the Fairbury Furniture Mattress Store, home to all of the latest and greatest mattresses in any and all sizes. Also inside Fairbury Furniture is the popular WC Market, a beloved shop that offers an ever-changing selection of unique gifts and fashionable home decor. So make your home interior beautiful, comfortable, stylish, and delightful when you shop at Fairbury's own Fairbury Furniture. Before we started recording, I said we said so many good things. You said so many good things. We should have been recording at that point. But you said kindness should not be confused with niceness, or niceness should not be confused with kindness. Rather. And if you're nice, you'll agree with someone in whatever identity they proclaim to have. And I'll say this, I'm a man, even though, because I feel like a woman, a kid, say I'm a kid, I feel more like a woman, although I'm a little boy. And you say, hey, you want to identify as a little girl, I'll do that because I'm nice. Sure. Or maybe, someone's, and pardon my examples here, maybe someone's on the street and it's the nice thing they're asking for money. And the nice thing would be to give them some money and just, get it off your conscience type of thing, give them what they want. But kindness would be doing what's right in a nice way, I guess you could say.
The hard challenge, this is, Aquinas at his best. One of my favorite lines of St. Thomas Aquinas, who is probably one of the greatest thinkers the world has ever known, is you seldom affirm, never deny, and always distinguish, right?
Can you say that one more time, please?
I sure can. You seldom affirm, never deny, and always distinguish, right? And because in reality, all the things that you have said, there is an aspect of the truth in all of that. So I would never deny, there's some aspect of the truth. I believe that Jesus is the fullness of the truth, the way, the truth, and the life, and that's why I've given my life to that as a priest. And so, but there is in what you're saying always some nugget of the reality of truth from, and so that's why we don't just straightforward deny everything that you just said. And if I do that, that shuts off all conversation, right? No longer, okay, this guy clearly thinks everything I believe is completely off.
Yeah,
right?
I wouldn't want to talk to you either if you said I was wrong to the core.
Exactly, right? You seldom affirm, he says seldom affirm, right? What that means is that, okay, what you said there, there's some real truth in that. However, I would want to distinguish all of that out. And that's why persons whether it's Aquinas or a Jordan Peterson type, a lot of people have a hard time with someone like that because they're distinguishing everything, right? Well, that's true, but let's make sure we parse this all out and distinguish all of these characteristics and these different aspects, right? So, for instance, kindness, I would say that it is always important to be kind, right? That's important. However, you can be kind, you can be nice and not be kind. However, you can't be kind without being nice, right? Because kind is a virtue. Nice can get in the way of virtue. And to define virtue, maybe for a second, it's the habitual disposition to do what is right, right? So virtue means that I am habitually patterned in my life to take humility, right? This person has the habitual disposition to be humble in almost every circumstance, right? Or whatever virtue. So kindness would be the habitual disposition to do what is kind. Niceness, I always like to use the bully on the playground analogy, helps kind of distinguish this out. The bully on the playground, say there's a bully on the playground and Joey goes up to the bully on the playground. The nice thing to do would be to hey, bully on the playground, I see that everybody's afraid of you and everybody's intimidated by you. They don't know what to do with you. Can I be your friend? And then they become part of the problem as well, right? Because now not just the bully is bullying, now the kid who saw the bully was bullying, well, I'll just be on his team so that we can bully other people together, right? that's not kindness. That's niceness. That's where niceness can lead us sometimes. If we're nice, the kind thing for the kid to do in that instance, right, would be for him to come up to the bully and say, hey, all of my friends, this would be, a little more sophisticated than a third grader would probably do it. But, hey, all of my friends are afraid of you. And I don't like that they're all afraid of you, why do you do that? Like to challenge the way they think, the typical, you could teach this to children in some way, like, why are you doing the thing that you're doing to all of my friends? And they might not respond to it. They might continue to bully you, but at least you're not now becoming, not only he's the problem, now I become part of the problem as well by feeding into that. That's where niceness can lead us. Niceness isn't always bad. It's often very good, but it can be bad when we choose to avoid doing the hard thing, right? Mm-hmm. And it's a hard thing to go up to a bully, whether you're a third grader or whether you're an 85-year-old at the nursing home and there's someone who's bullying the other people in the nursing home, right? Like that's hard to go and approach that. But we're called to do the hard thing when it is the right thing, even when it is the hard thing, right?
Right.
And,
can you ever do the right thing when it is the hard thing and do it too hard?
Absolutely.
What if that third grade kid tackled the bully and started beating him up and called it justice?
Mm-hmm. And that is now getting into what we were discussing a little bit before too, before we started the podcast or the show here, is that there are 4 cardinal virtues. Cardinal is from the word cardo, which means hinge, right? All the other virtues stem off of these virtues, right? These 4 virtues in particular, and it's justice, fortitude, temperance, and prudence, right? Those are the 4. And me, myself, because I'm a pretty, for those of you that know me out there, I'm a pretty intense personality. I've been working for COVID has forced me to really work on maybe sometimes I'm a little bit too much for people. Like I want to draw them to Jesus, and it's because I want them to be. It's like the dad who's constantly you can be better. Like the dad that has a child
sports dad,
the sports dad. You're never going to be good enough, right? And you have to let your kids know that they're doing a good job from time to time. As a spiritual dad, a spiritual father, sometimes what I can do is I can be too hard on my spiritual kids sometimes. And just by letting them have it, you guys, you got to be holier. Don't you love Jesus? Of course they love Jesus. They wouldn't be coming to church if they didn't love Jesus. But you need to love Jesus more. And if you never tell them, hey, what you did there was a really awesome thing, that leads us down a bad path, right? Because my justice side can be they're not holy enough yet, right? And so be it. But that's why there's other virtues like temperance and prudence. Prudence tells me don't go beat them up when they just did something good, but it wasn't good enough, right? Tell them the good that was there so you can lift them up. So hey, what you did here was really, really good. Mm-hmm. Always beginning with that, right? I know they talk about that, and every thinker that's ever, been reasonable at helping other people says, start with the good, right? Then lead to, hey, maybe consider this for the future. And there's also a time just to leave out, right now it's not time to tell them, hey, you did something good here. Now go do something better next time. Sometimes you need to do that. Sometimes you just need to let it go. And I'm in my personality type, those who are type A personalities like me out there in the world, we come at it too hard from people sometimes, and we come in with a whole lot of justice and fortitude, and we say, it's better for them if I tell them the hard thing they need to hear. It might not be the right time, or I might be at a miserable spot in my life, and I just am taking out my frustration on them, right? Like the child that is mad, instead of helping them, I end up hurting them because I'm not at a good disposition interiorly. And if I'm not at a good disposition interiorly, it's not time for me to talk to them about a hard thing, right? Mm-hmm. So that's a little bit justice, fortitude, temperance, prudence. All 4 of those have to come together. Justice and fortitude, pretty clear, to fight for what is right and just in this world. Fortitude, it's in the middle. Every virtue is in the middle of 2 extremes. So we could take 2 aspects of that. Over here in fortitude is cowardice, right? That would be like the person who just says, I'll go be with the bully, right? Like I'll go be a friend with the bullies and we'll bully everybody together, right?
Yeah, or stands back and doesn't do anything.
And do nothing, exactly, right? And just avoid it altogether. Then there's rashness, which is what you brought up, right? The rashness example would be like, I'm going to bully this jerk to the ground, right? Now I'm just going to tackle him and let him know who's boss, right? Like, and start slugging him, I suppose, like Ralphie on A Christmas Story or something like that, right? And so he's bleeding in the face and mom has to pull me off, right? Like Ralphie would be an example of rashness there, right? And so those kind of things, like true fortitude is in the middle of those of rashness and cowardice, right? Right, and the goal is to keep working our ways toward that beautiful means in the middle of those two extremes in our lifelong journey. And I believe that can't happen apart from a divine being who has those virtues perfected in his perfect being to teach us imperfect beings how to do that better and better.
Well put. And we're talking about prayer in this episode largely, so I want to kind of segue into prayer a little more here. But that was a beautiful tangent, by the way. I love that.
Sure.
And it wasn't even a tangent, it was completely related. But when someone, when you pray, you never want to affect the will of God. Yeah. You never want to change the will of God. Mm-hmm. If you could, you wouldn't want to trust me, type of thing. Yeah. Is it wrong for people to pray to God and say, please, God, heal my son, and I will do X, Y, and Z, to say, to plead with him, to beg him to do this thing? Happens all the time. You see it on Facebook. Someone's parents are dying, someone's cat's dying, someone's kid is in a critical state, and you say, you pray, or you ask people to pray it really seems like people do want to change the will of God. I'm guilty of that. It's like, hey, I don't know it doesn't look so good right now, but hey, if you could just let this happen, I'd be all right with that. And I'll say a rosary every day type of thing. Is that the wrong way to pray?
Yeah, this is a really profound and good question. It is not the wrong way to pray. It's, again, seldom affirm, never deny, always distinguish, right? And so
genius, by the way.
Distinguish that out. The beauty of praying in that way is, like, God tells us, like, ask, and he says ask over and over and over. There's stories of that in the scriptures time and time again of, like, ask, seek, and you will find, right? Knock and the door will be open. All of these aspects of this. Absolutely pour your heart out to God. Like, my grandmother is dying, or my whoever is in my life is dying. Jesus, could you please bring healing? Because he can. We know he can, right? It is possible for God to bring about that healing. And however, it's good to ask for that. At the same time, what I have to understand in me and my, like, finite wisdom, my finite understanding, and all of the stuff, God sees things from an infinitely larger picture than I see things. And he understands that and I know everybody says this, like, oh, there's a reason this happened, right? Like, and some people, we don't like to hear that sometimes, but I do know this, that when we see God face to face someday, it's going to become clear, like, oh, that makes so much sense. That happens to us all the time, right? And this is kind of my way of interpreting this. I don't know if this would be like the way the church would say, like, absolutely, this is how it is approached, but I think this is very helpful for people to understand. I always like to say that if God doesn't heal the body, right? Like, because our souls, like this eternal reality that, at my death separates from my body, right? Like, my body can't move. It can't do anything apart from this thing that I can't touch inside of me, we call a soul. When that soul's no longer in the body, we call that a corpse, right? And so we clearly see something is animating all of this, right? And making all that happen. So if all of that is happening and these kind of things are going down, I have to understand what's happening in those moments that my soul is bigger, is everlasting. It lasts eternally, right? So God sees my soul is extremely important. It's not to denigrate the body, but we believe in the resurrection of the body. We won't go there today because that's going to take us way upfield and an understanding of how that all works. But we can parse that out. But this, like, if God doesn't, I believe this, that if he doesn't heal the body, I believe that he didn't need to heal the body to heal the soul. right? If he does heal the body, then the healing of the soul, the healing of the body was necessary for the healing of the soul, right? And so I think that might not be theological from the church, but I think that's how we as Christians, it's a good way to look at it.
Now, you almost had me for a second. That sounded really good, but what if a wretched person dies and someone was asking like, hey, keep him around? You know, because by the way, let's not forget, it's possible to go to hell, right? Well, so what if someone, I'm praying for, I hate to use an example of someone that, I'll just say my sister. They're all great though. So I had a sister who's dying, and I know she's, just really gone awry. I mean, she's Ouija boards every night. She spray painted on the Catholic Church. She mocks the Eucharist, things like this. Just terrible things, living the opposite lifestyle. And it's not looking good for her soul if I'm speculating after she dies. And I'm like, hey, God, just keep her around maybe. I'll work on her. I promise. I shouldn't say I'll work on it. I'll do something good for her. Just keep her around so that when she dies, maybe I'll have more hope that she's going to heaven. And she dies. What about that? You said you got to only take the soul once it's, if he doesn't let him live, it wasn't.
And this is why I'm also claiming that it isn't like absolute theological, set in stone material. I think the great consolation for us as Catholics in particular of the gift of this reality of purgatory, right? Like God exists outside of space and time, right? He does. That's the reality. He exists outside of space and time. So if he exists outside of space and time, like for you and me, right? I was explaining it this way, that this is a moment right now, and this is a moment right now, and this is a moment right now, right? 3 separate moments for you and I. However, for God, that moment there, this moment here, and this moment here are all the same moment in time and reality for him. He sees every single moment in all time and reality at the same time, right? So, this is the beauty of it, moving for your sister, just because she, for instance, will just, I don't know your sister, I don't know anything, but if she's at that spot at this point, at her death, God exists outside of space. And I don't know how long purgatory lasts. I don't know what it is. I know what it means is that in order to be in the presence of God, I can't even desire sin, right? Because you can't be in the presence of goodness itself and desire to do sin, right? So does purgatory last this long? Is there an act? Because I've never been outside of time and space. If you have, you can explain it to us. But that's the beauty of it, is that God can still heal the soul in between here and that eternal reality of heaven. Those are just words that we use again, right? Like heaven is being in the presence of God. Heaven is the complete absence of God, right? And so that would be where I would say, if the body still didn't get healed, right? God isn't bound to space and time to heal that soul. He can still do it. I think that's ultimately, I always kind of refer to hell as God's last mercy, right? In a very real way. Because one thing God won't do is he won't force us to be in his presence, right? He's not going to do it. To be in the presence of love itself, that's the beauty of it. I have to want to be in the presence of love. So in a sense, I always like to say that hell is that, if God is not going to force you to be in his presence, even in eternity, right?
Yes, because then it would cease to be love. And I always have said, I coined it the law of love. And part of the law of love, a prerequisite is that you are free to also not love. Yep. If I want to be in a loving relationship with my girlfriend, she has to have the option to not love me back, even if I do love her. Yep. Because if I force her to love me, well, it ceases to be love. That's not love, because there's no choice.
Amen.
Since 1950, Dave's Supermarket in Fairbury has been wowing customers throughout Central Illinois with their unmatched customer service, delectable deli market, beloved grocery carryout service, and many other fortes, which is why they've earned hundreds of 5-star reviews online. Dave's 3rd Street Deli has plenty of seating and is a destination place to meet your family and friends for good food, fun, and fellowship. Not only is their home-style fried chicken here the best around, but you can also enjoy free coffee and 50-cent ice cream every single day. And be sure to check out their Old World Bakery while you're here, where freshly baked goods are prepared every morning. You'll find hundreds of unique and signature items here at Dave's that you won't find anywhere else, like their famous potato salad, ham loaf, and canned meats, just to name a few. Come experience this revered location that puts the super in supermarket when you shop at Dave's in Fairbury, Illinois, wowing the customer for over 70 years.
Right? And that's why it was such a loving act when Christ died for us, because it was choice. He could have walked away and ran away, just fled that whole area and just not, because he knew it was coming, but he chose to do it. What an act of love.
Yeah.
A willing sacrifice.
Yep.
That's really profound stuff.
It is profound stuff. And what, kind of with you saying all of that, you said a little bit ago, these things that we have been talking about don't seem to have a direct impact, like on the prayer, everything we're talking about has to do with prayer, right? And I want to all of these things that we're considering, that we're talking about virtue, the goal of entering into prayer is to raise our heart and our minds and our souls to God. Yes. How does that, what happens when we do that? We become more virtuous. And you and I talking about this, we become more virtuous when you and I discuss this. And I know what's going to happen to me. The conversation that you and I are having in this right now is going to feed my prayer, right? It's going to feed the time that I have with Jesus. Jesus, I need to parse this out. Or that line that I gave you a little bit ago about that I've thought about many times. I'm there's certainly theological holes that could be shot in this of if he doesn't heal the soul or to heal the body, the soul, the soul thing that I said a little bit ago. I know there's but I can sit in prayer and give that to God, reveal this to me more deeply, right? Continue to strengthen me. And that's the gift of humility, knowing that I just don't know it all. And the things that I could have said in this conversation with you, in reality, it could be tomorrow I'll be oh man, that was clearly inaccurate, because what are we doing? We're seldom affirming, always denying, and always distinguishing, right? Seldom affirm, never deny, always distinguish. This side of heaven, we're going to just keep learning. And so to help all of this stuff, this line that I've been using a lot with my people is, what fills our heads informs our hearts, and what informs our hearts inspires our actions, right? And so you and I are talking about virtue, and we're lifting ourselves to the idea of I know I'm not perfectly humble, and I'm far from it. I've come a long ways by the grace of God, but there's further to go than I've already come, right? Which means there's more arrogance that needs to be lifted out of me. If I'm not perfectly humble yet, then there's arrogance. And I always like sharing that too of, for instance, we look around and we always compare ourselves to other people. I'm not holy, but I'm not as unholy as that person, right? And we do that as human beings. We kind of have that sense inside of us, and we look at, well, that person is really arrogant over there. But here's the challenge of all of this. Without conversation with God, we just continue to be arrogant. It was for me, right? This has been one of the greatest revelations of the last 2 years, and having to spend more time in prayer with God and looking at someone says, hey, Father Adam is really arrogant. Well, I don't think I'm arrogant, and we immediately think that, or that person who's maybe the most arrogant person in Pontiac, Illinois, whoever it is, right? We look at them well,
I know him.
And so all of that, that's all right. I love it. That person that is there, well, we just if I were to just come up to them and say, hey, you're super arrogant, well, they're not going to think they're arrogant, right? We don't think, they might deep down be yeah, I need to grow at that. But for me, when someone in my parish were to say, this is getting to that vulnerable spot, if someone in my parish thinks that I tend to be arrogant, I might not like that, right? But for whatever reason, and maybe their understanding of it isn't accurate or isn't completely at place, but if I still have humility to grow in, which I know I do, right, then there's still some arrogance in me that God needs to root out, even if I don't think I'm the most arrogant person around, or maybe and here's the other beauty of it, right? Say, and I'm not, right? I'm the most humble person in Pontiac, Illinois, right? Well, in all reality, like, this is why the saints are so profound. It's why Mother Teresa was so profound. She wasn't comparing herself to anybody else or anything. She was comparing herself to God, which is why she can say, I am the worst of sinners. It used to drive me nuts when Mother Teresa would say, I'm the worst of sinners. She's like the holiest person walking the face of the earth, right? It would drive, I was like, but I didn't understand it in my like minimal understanding of spirituality. Why she said that is because she was looking at where she was and knowing that there was an infinite gap between her and God. Perhaps she was the holiest person on the face of the planet. Well, who cares in comparison to God, right? Perhaps I'm the most humble person in Pontiac, Illinois. Not true, but say I am. Who cares? Like, there's still an infinite gap between me and the living God of like growth and humility. So there's more arrogance that needs to get rooted out. And so that's I think the path to holiness comes through humility more than anything else, is to be humble, to say like, God, I know that I am not perfect. I know I don't have it together. And I know other people are seeing these things in me. Help me to be better at those things. That's prayer. That's like truly handing my will over. Sometimes I don't want to be more humble because I kind of like where I am, but I still have like Jesus, like as much as I don't want, my will is to stay like sometimes like, I'm like, this is hard enough, Jesus. I want to go do what I want to do in the way that I want to do it. But man, when I can just put that aside and say, well, so be it, Jesus, let it be done to me, is why we hold up Mary in our church, right? Let it be done to me according to your word. As much as I may not like that sometimes. That's the beauty of prayer. It starts with humility.
You spoke about how us having this conversation and when you pray, when you talk to or about God, it seems to be, for lack of a better term, spiritually nourishing. And I want to ask, what is grace anyway? Is it spiritual aid? You said something along the lines of blessings flow through this prayer. What does that mean? I think very literally quite often to a fault. And I'm like, are you putting a pipe between you and God when you're praying? And also that's finally when this good stuff can start flowing to you and to him. What is grace?
So when we get to this idea, we as Catholics, we have two concepts of grace. There's two of them. We call actual grace is one, and the other is sanctifying grace, right? Actual grace is happening right now with you and I in this conversation, right? I'm learning some pretty cool things by just talking with you and hearing what you have to say. This is an actual grace like that can lead me closer to God, right? And that grace is always there. In all reality, the more virtuous I am, the more capable I am of receiving that grace. The less virtuous I am, like that's why we keep asking, like, God, keep pouring down grace upon me, right? The more humble I am to receive that grace, the more I am like God more than anything else. The more his grace, like, because again, he's not going to force his grace upon me. He's going to grow me little by little to receive what I can receive. And that requires like you can also take it from this standpoint. There was a point in like when I was when I was really getting into my faith about, post college was where it was really getting serious. And I was coming to God, like saying, God, work on me. Change me. Like there were like the sins that were going on in my life, they were like being rooted out little by little by little. I was like, holy cow, I never thought I would ever get past that sin. I never thought I'd ever get past that sin, right? Whatever those things are. In my naivete and my early spirituality, I started to think to myself, like, there'll come a day where there won't be any more to work on, right? Like, I'll have it all figured out, God, and it'll be awesome. Then I'll really be good for you and help you in so many ways. But that's always that naive early spirituality that comes. Like, this is the beauty of how God grows us, is that's where I was at that point. And now the things that I'm working on in my spiritual life and the sins that I'm trying to work on today, I didn't even know were sins back there. But if he revealed those to me back there, I would have thrown in there's no way I can do this. This is too hard. I can't, I have these things to work on. And he grows us little by little by little. It's like he's drawing us to him deeper and deeper and deeper. And the only thing that keeps me from being drawn to him deeper and deeper is my will not being his. Like, I want to do it my way. I want to do what I want to do. God, help me to keep coming to you. Help me to keep spending time with you. The more time I spend with him, the more I become like him. And the more I can be a means of showing him to the world as well. So
when you're more virtuous by choice, you act more virtuous. I think that's almost a prerequisite of being virtuous, is choosing to do it. You can't be forced into, oops, now I'm virtuous. Yeah. But by being virtuous, it's easier for grace to flow into you, correct or incorrect?
I would say there is, right? Like this, as Aquinas would say again, right? I'm like not the super like high theological guy, right? Like where I keep bringing up Aquinas, like it's just, the guy clearly knows what he's talking about, right? Other brothers, priests might be like, hey, like whatever, but they would be able to go a lot deeper. But however, like what he says as well is that grace builds on nature, right? And so the more naturally virtuous that I am, the more grace that can come in. So like that's the beauty. And it's not because God's stopping it from happening. It's because I haven't allowed grace the more grace comes into me, the more it can transform me. So I become more virtuous. And then the more I can receive going, like, cause it's always waiting for me to take it. I just ain't ready to take it all yet, right? Like, and so he takes us little by little by little. Receive this grace that's going to transform you. Receive this grace that is going to make you more like me, which is the point of religion, right? Like the point of why we believe what we believe is that it is supposed to transform me. And I think too many people, sadly, just think that if I just do all of these things that I'm supposed to, then it will, sometimes we just do religious things for the sake of doing them because I need to be obedient, right? Like that can help, right? But we have to get to the spot where it's just not, I can't be, this is what Jesus is talking all the time. It's not about the law. It's about love, right? Like the law is important because if we don't have laws, because we're not virtuous, naturally gifted to be virtuous in the way we need to be because of sin and brokenness and all of that. However, when we grow in that little by little by little, we receive that natural virtue starts to grow as I receive, like you and I speaking right now, perfect example. I'll go home. I'm going to spend some time before I go to bed tonight and I'm going to think like, what kinds of things did I say that were completely foolish, like that I need to give to Jesus more so that, because it was about me, right? And for instance, in this conversation, I've thought it a couple of times already in the back of my mind, like I am talking a whole heck of a lot, right? Like I'm not receiving very much. Like one of my dear friends always says like, 2 ears, 1 mouth, right? Use them proportionately. and
except when you're a guest on a podcast, people are tuning in to hear you.
Sure. And I get it. And I'm like, but man, there's so much that I could be learning from Paul right now. Instead of, and that's the beauty of like, as it says in Proverbs, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. And we're called to do that, right? And so hopefully something I'm saying is helpful to you or someone out there.
I assure you plenty of it is, yes.
But that we have to be humble enough to say like, okay, what am I supposed to be learning from this? Even the things that I'm saying. And go home tonight, say, all right, Lord, what do you need me to learn so that you filled my head with some new information tonight? How are you desiring to transform me on account of that information instead of it just being information for the sake of information, right? Like that he might actually use it. That's where I have to be open.
So I hate to say the same question twice, but is grace, roughly speaking, spiritual aid from God?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, roughly speaking, and the more open we are to receive it, because it's always there, right? So yes, you could say that. It's spiritual aid from God to help us become more like him, right? And there's a theological definition, but that would be a good way to say it that the average person would understand it.
Okay. And you spoke earlier about how it's important to acknowledge the fact that we have finite minds and we don't have access to the full big picture of God's plan, his desire, what he sees. You know, he can see our entire life's timeline right in front of him as though it's one piece of paper, and we have to live each moment one to the next. We don't know how the dots are going to connect. We can only know that looking backwards, and even then kind of fuzzy.
Sure.
But this is kind of a weird thing to say, but I feel like sometimes, especially atheistic scientists, can get a little too prideful in thinking that the potential to know how the universe works front to back is within the means of their understanding.
Yeah.
Like they can understand that, and in doing so, they completely don't acknowledge the potential, at least, for a whole metaphysical reality to be a massive component of all reality.
Yeah. A scientist that hasn't been taught like philosophical, like, because what is philosophy, right? Like I saw this study some time ago that how do people come to know what is truth in the world, right? So many people say it's science. Well, as Trent Horn says a lot of times, he will say that when you are using science to try to measure metaphysical realities, like realities beyond the physical world, it's like trying to weigh a chicken with a yardstick, right? You're using the wrong tool, right?
Precisely, yes. Yeah, man.
So that's the problem there. Like what is science? Well, science is taking in natural phenomena that go on in the world and looking at it, analyzing it, coming up with hypotheses and finding out whether those case studies are actually accurate or not, right? And that's the idea of science. When we're talking metaphysical realities, you can't do that. So I wouldn't want to just, if I were to like put my hand to the fire and say, are they being prideful in saying that? Yes, they're being prideful, but it's also because of a lack of information about something, that a reality that they don't understand.
Right.
Which is why, like, when Stephen Hawking or whoever argues against, I don't know, like a Bishop Barron character, whoever else it is out there, like, so often Stephen Hawking ends up looking like, wow, like this guy has this incredible IQ, but has no idea what he's talking about, right? And, because he doesn't understand the metaphysical reality. He hasn't been trained in it. He might be able to talk about physical reality in incredible ways and blow all of our minds to see that and understand that. However, he hasn't been trained in the art of understanding philosophical, metaphysical reality. And so in that, a lot of times I'm like, oh my goodness, he doesn't understand like that. But that's not his fault. It's not something, and thanks be to God, he did learn everything he needed to learn about the physical reality. But the problem with a lot of times with incredible scientists and people of incredible IQ is they miss out on something because they're so sharp. They end up missing out on something like, well, this clearly must be the engineer. I was a missionary at Bradley University at one point and worked there. And there's a lot of engineers, people training to be engineers there. And they end up thinking like, well, the physical reality ends up being their end all be all, right? And they miss out on this whole other phenomena in the world that, because they're so, but thanks be to God, they're working on that. But let the philosophers also recognize that we need to inform each other. So, and because sometimes philosophers and religious gurus can become just as prideful. Say, you guys are just all fools because all you focus on is the scientific world. That's a heresy we call dualism, right? Like there's the body and the soul. And we live in a world that constantly struggles with this connection of body and soul, right? And so that being the case, scientists are going to struggle with the metaphysical realities sometimes, and sometimes the philosophers are going to understand with the physical reality. But that's the beauty of it, is it leads us right back to prayer if we are humble, understanding that I don't understand a whole lot of stuff over here, and I don't understand a whole lot of stuff over here, but God has given me a gift in this area, and it's okay that I don't know all of that. I don't have to know everything. But that's the beauty of prayer.
It's amazing for me, I've heard incredibly intelligent, world-renowned people that are experts, like an Elon Musk or something. Sometimes, when they're pressed on the issue of God, their hang-ups are things that an expert in theology could actually explain very well to them and perhaps, explode his faith.
Absolutely.
But I'm like, wow, it's really apparent that although an incredibly smart individual, Elon Musk is not an expert in theology. Although he's smart, there's so much he doesn't know in this field. Like, we can be experts in one field and most likely we're not experts in another, especially something like faith. So, and I'm curious, why does it seem sometimes like when we pray, God is silent? Is God ever truly silent?
The first thing that I always think of this story of a girl that I knew. She came up to me and she was sharing about, she had just heard from this, went to this conference with a priest who was speaking, and she said, I could not believe how God was working in this guy's life, the amazing things that God was doing in his life. And she says, God doesn't ever do that for me. And the first thing, and this probably wasn't the right thing to say in the moment. Maybe it was, who knows, give it to God. I told her, I said, how often do you give him opportunities to speak to you, right? And she admitted, she's like, not too many. I said, that's the key, right? God didn't start changing my life in the way that he's been changing my life. And he certainly didn't start, not because he couldn't, but because I wasn't giving him opportunities to do so, right? With that sense of that when God, first of all, sometimes this is a Catholic critique of even kind of like my own Catholic critique. Sometimes we're really good at saying prayers and not very good at praying, right? And we say a whole lot of prayer, a whole lot of things. We can say a whole lot of Our Fathers, Hail Marys, Glory Bees, which are good things to do. They're supposed to lead us, right? The point of prayer is to lead us into to contemplation, to true conversation with God. We can't make that happen, only he can, but we can set a groundwork to help us get there, right? And what that means is I have to learn. This is why I like talking about all of these other aspects that doesn't seem like we're talking about prayer, but actually are helping us to understand prayer. Because what I love to do in prayer more than anything else is think about the things that you and I have been discussing and saying, God, I don't entirely understand this. I probably said some things that don't make entire sense to people. But I do know that you can help me understand that more deeply than I have in the past or than I did today. And so that's kind of the reality of sometimes we just don't give God the opportunities to speak to us, right? You have to actually take time to do it. And if I just say, okay, I'm going to go pray now and I'm going to say 3 Hail Marys and 1 Our Father, then I'm going to go to bed. Well, it has to go a little further than that, right? That's like leading towards prayer. That is prayer, don't get me wrong. That's leading towards the kind of prayer that we're called to enter into with God.
Which is unscripted prayer. Okay.
And that, for instance, sometimes Catholics pray a rosary or whatever it is, and we're going through all these Hail Marys, and we're in the middle of the, third joyful mystery, the birth of Jesus, right? And so the point of that, and we feel guilty because I haven't finished all of the Hail Marys. Well, I'm caught up in the reality, holy crap, God became man, right? He's one with me, that God who is beyond all existence came into this world, wants to dwell with me and dwelt among us. And we're caught up in this incredible reality, but we feel guilty because I haven't finished all the hymn. And no, just sit with that. Let God be there. Let him enter into that moment. If you don't finish all the Hail Marys, I don't think God or Mary in heaven or whatever is going to be I can't believe you didn't finish your rosary, right? No, you entered into prayer in the way that you were called to enter into prayer in that moment. And so letting him speak to I do believe you have to, I've been working on prayer seriously, I suppose, for 15, 17 years, something like that. And I feel like I'm just getting to, I'm just figuring it out. It requires consistency, that consistent walking with God, give a little bit of time every single day. If you don't pray at all, okay, let's give a minute, just to sit and be what was it that we did at the beginning, right? What happened in my day today that God is trying to reveal to me something that I hadn't thought about before. That's why I wanted to do that at the beginning, is for us to, like, it gives us a pause to think, what went really well today? What didn't go well that I need to offer to God, And now he can start growing that. So you have to create an environment and a soil that allows it to happen, and we have to slow things down enough in our heads, because our heads are constantly going. Jesus, I'm just going to allow what's going on in my head to just give to you. I'm just going to be here with you for a little while. Calm the heck down, right? And that's a challenge for us.
Have you ever had a time where your communication with God sounded a lot like, why on earth is this happening to me? Mm-hmm. Where are you? Mm-hmm. Have you ever had a time like that? And why do those times even exist? Mm-hmm. Why might God not be helping you out, or so it seems?
Sure. I would say perhaps the most challenging time of that in my life to date was in the heart of COVID, right in the middle of the heaviest part of it. Because what have I done? Well, like, my call as a priest, I had always kind of thought, well, it's going to be to help draw people to Jesus, right? Like, to help draw, like, my faith might be an inspiration and help other people come to know Jesus and our Catholic faith. Well, then all of a sudden, there was a point no one could even come to church, because we were, no one could be there, because we were worried that if people came, we would spread the contagion more and all these things. And so I started getting to that really bad spot of like, I felt purposelessness. Because I always said, well, if people don't come to church, I'll go get them. And I couldn't even go to their homes and find them in that point. There was a heavy burden of that. It was a purposelessness almost in my life that I was feeling. I wanted to be a priest to help draw people. I can't even do that right now. Right? Like, what am I supposed to do? And then what happens is you start dwelling on that and sitting with it. And I fell into probably, in all reality, probably a level of depression that I didn't know. Depression is in my family. And I always thought that I would be able to outthink it, I can outthink depression, and so many people that have never experienced depression think they can outthink it. I've heard enough people, I counsel people through it, I help people through it, and I never had gotten to the spot where I was like, oh man, is this how people with depression feel? Because I had never felt like I lost my ambition or my zeal or my excitement. And there was a time in the middle of COVID where it was starting to wane. I was like, oh, this is how they all feel. I always knew what they were thinking. I knew what they were feeling in my thoughts, but I had never experienced it. Mm-hmm. And when I truly experienced it, it has helped me in so many ways. I think I don't think you would care if I shared this. I share this because this helps see that darkness that I got into. My brother at different times in his life has battled depression, and I've talked about it with him, and I've talked with a lot of people about it. And to me, the person who likes to outthink my feelings, like, oh, my feelings feel this way, just overthink them, like, you'll be able to think past your feelings. I could never understand why, if my brother was frustrated or overwhelmed or finding depression in his life, like, you work yourself out of it, right? Like, I could never, but then when it truly happened, I was like, oh, this is why he can't think himself out of it. Because if he feels this way, and the way that I'm feeling, this like heavy burden of purposelessness and and even in those times, I was going to God. My prayer was still, I was praying every day. I was spending at least an hour in prayer every day. I was doing mass every day. I was entering into it. And I knew intellectually that I was a beloved son of the Father in heaven, as we talked about earlier. But in here, I wasn't experiencing, I didn't feel it. I wasn't feeling it. And I usually have been able to be like, well, if you don't feel it, change your prayer, do this, do that, and nothing was working, nothing was happening. But here is what I believe more than anything else when moments like that happen. And my brother put it into powerful words. because I tend to be the person in my family who, like, I'm the solutions person, right? Like, if there's a problem that no one else can figure out, I'll figure it out. Let me take care of it. In that time, I didn't want any of them to see me or talk to me. I avoided them like the plague because I didn't want them to see me at my worst. Because I wasn't going to be any help to them. And I'm the person who's supposed to be the helper, the one who solves things, the one who helps do all of that. And I went through that heavy time in a way, I wouldn't ever wish it upon anybody, but I am so grateful for that time now because, and as my brother said, he said to me, you will be empathetic in a way that you have never been empathetic before because now you know truly how it feels to be in that. And God was the one, I believe, to my core. He didn't, like, of course he didn't want me to go through the misery of that, but he also knows that there is a greater good. Like, you will be, I know without question, I am a so much better priest today than I was 2.5 years ago because of all of that suffering that I went through in that time, and that suffering of heaviness of spirit. I kept praying. Jesus, like, I don't understand. I know this is going to be a good thing for me in the end, but I don't care right now because this feels awful, right?
I've said so many prayers like that, like, hey, Lord, I know this is probably a good thing and you're probably testing me. And I've asked for the test because I thought it was tough in the moment. But if you could just let it go now, I'm done. Like a tap.
Yep.
I've been there.
Amen. And now I believe this because here's the thing. 2.5 years ago, I was a very different priest than I am today. Even you and I, the way we're talking today, I'm talking a whole lot more about feelings than I would have in the past, because I just admit it, I think this is worth sharing, and I think this is good for people to know. I have for years said that everybody should be in counseling, I had always said that it's good for everybody to be in counseling, but I had never put my money where my mouth was, right? And so I said, all right, it's COVID. I don't have any people to minister to. No one's coming to the church. I can't go get them in their houses. So I said, well, I might as well go to counseling, right? And so I did some counseling. And I remember my first meeting with her. And I'm sharing all this because this is so important in understanding how, why this prayer stuff, it leads to where we're getting to, in case you're wondering, why is he sharing this?
No. And by the way, this makes people who look up to you. There's a lot of people that look up to you. I know them personally who are extremely shy about the fact that they've been prescribed counseling, that they're on maybe antidepressants, and that they have been considering counseling. The fact that you're vulnerable enough in sharing that you went means an awful lot. And I appreciate the heck out of that. Absolutely. I really do, and I know a lot of other people do. So please continue.
Thanks be to God. Yeah, and so I went to the counselor. We were meeting on the first meeting with this young lady online that I did in counseling. She was, I was sharing all kinds. Clearly I can share lots of stuff, right? And so I was sharing my heart and putting things out there and kind of what was going on, mostly intellectually. And she was sharing these things with me, okay, this. She was kind of giving some information. At the end of the first session, this was a pivotal moment. At the end of that first session, she looked at me and she says, how did this session make you feel? And internally, I wanted to throw up a little bit. I was like, this is why people don't do counseling, And so, sure enough, I was like, and I thought, I'm going to outthink this girl, right? And so I told her, I said, hey, I feel very excited right now because I just learned a whole lot of new things that I didn't know before. And she looked at me and she called my bluff right then and there. She says, that's just not what I asked. I didn't ask what you were thinking or how you were thinking. She says, I asked, how are you feeling right now? And I looked at her and I said, and therein lies what I know you and I need to work on, because I don't know how to answer your question right now, right? And I had to get that. That's why my prayer has changed everything because of that darkness in those moments during that year of the heaviest part of the year of COVID. Now my prayer has been transformed as well because I'm so much more open with God about my feelings and I know I'm feeling I'm okay with it, and I don't just try to repress them and outthink them in the way that I did. Clearly, Jesus, I'm feeling some pressure in my chest right now. Instead of bulldozing and continuing to work to get more stuff done right now, you are asking me to take a break right now. I believe that's the body, soul working together. God, like if I have, for instance, I have a broken ankle, I keep walking on the broken ankle, the ankle will never get better, right? If I have a pain in my chest, like my soul is telling me like, hey, there's stress in your chest, or there's heaviness in your shoulders right now, or whatever it is, or you're feeling like a headache right now. And often we Americans just keep bulldozing. I just got to keep working because I'll feel better when I get this done. That is God's way, I believe, of saying like, hey, that headache that you're feeling right now, that pressure in your chest you're feeling right now, that heaviness in your shoulders that you're feeling right now, that means I want you to stop and take a break and come talk to me, right? That is why I believe that. And so because I'm such a mover, I believe that misery that I went through in the middle of COVID was God's way of saying like, you are so prideful because you just keep thinking if you work hard enough, you will get past this, and you are going to have to surrender this to me in order to get past this. And it's for the first time in my life, in the heaviest moment of my life, in that time of COVID, I could no longer do it myself. It was the first time I can remember that I was like, I cannot do this on my own. I have to surrender all of this over. That is why he had to send me to the lowest of the low, because I'm a darn prideful, stubborn human being at times. And I had to get to that lowest spot so he could say like, now are you ready to slow down and let me do what I want to do in you? That was why that time needed to happen. And that's why we go through suffering, because at the end of the suffering is always a resurrection. We just have to keep going to God and it's that will thing, right? Yeah. Not my will, but God, I needed to surrender my will over in a way I had never surrendered it over before.
Which is, at the end of the day, also a choice. You have to choose to do that. I've always said, humans are a lot like crude iron. If you rip crude iron out of the ground, it's all impure and full of crud, and you have to throw it into the flames and then beat the crap out of it. And then if you do that and it doesn't dissolve in the flames, it'll come out the other side steel, which is an amazing thing to use for all sorts of different projects. You can make buildings out of it. You be a great tool for whoever's, utilizing the steel. But again, you have to not. God will put you in the flames. You'll put yourself in the flames by way of your own choices a lot of the time. Maybe God will put you in there as well. Yep. But you have to not break, maybe. And by not break, that means maybe you give it up to God, right? Or you could try to fight through it all yourself, and then you break. And then no good comes out of it, and you're just a broken human being after that. I feel like if you can get put in the flames more often and just turn to God like you're supposed to, that's how you won't break, and maybe that's how you become steel. Is that making any sense?
It does make sense, and what you're talking about is a particular like heresy that we fall, which is generally not like what you're saying, but like what you're referring to, right? And a heresy in the sense of like what is called Pelagianism, right? That is saying that if I work hard enough, I will make myself holy, right? Which I would say is a pretty strong American mindset as well, right? Like if I just work and work and work, I'll become what I'm supposed to become. And that's not all bad, right? There's a good there, right? Like there's a good, but it's a twisted good, which is what the evil one does. He takes something good, that work is good, right? But when we work to the point that I can figure out how to do it myself, and this is what you're saying there, I believe that the only way that I was truly going to encounter what God wanted me to encounter where I am today is by him by me having, because I was so stubborn and so prideful about like for instance with the people at my parish, right? They will become holy. I'm going to make them holy. Like that dad who tells their kids like, you need to do this. You're not doing it well enough. Do it better, right? God needed me to see like, hey, the only way you're going to be able to lead the people that you're called to lead in the way that you're wanting to lead them is by humbling yourself and recognizing that. And it took a pandemic to get me to do that. It took these last 2 years to be like, okay, I'm going to surrender this over to you, God, in a way that I have not before. And I can't put into words how tough and difficult that was, but how grateful I am for that at this point, because it made me a new person. And like my brother told me, I think I know I can understand human beings so much better, and ultimately because God has reformed me, like you were talking about in that image, letting him reform me, but I wasn't willing to let it happen. Sometimes we're too stubborn to let it happen, and he needs to send us to a really dark spot in order to get out. And if we isolate ourselves further, it will get worse. Like when so many people get mad at God in those moments, right? And say like, why are you making this happen to me? I'm done with you. I don't want anything to do with you anymore. And they've taken themselves away from the one being that can actually help them out of it. And now they will go further and further into isolation and deeper darkness. And then it becomes uglier and uglier. And if they do get themselves out of it, it's by some actual grace of God, but it also means like, look at what I did. I got myself out of this, right? And I live with a humility in my life that I never had before, because I always thought I won't struggle with any sort of depression, right? It won't happen to me. I'll think myself out of it. I live with a newfound reality of knowing that if I rely too much upon myself, that I can go there again, that I can get to that spot. And they do share this, counselors share this oftentimes with people, that it's often not when the person, like when people start becoming most suicidal or thinking suicidal thoughts, it's not when they're in the heaviness of the depression as much. It's when they feel it coming on, because they don't want to go there again. Like they know what it felt like. They knew what it was, right? Like the challenge of that, like I'm feeling like we're heading back to that spot, and I don't want to go there again. I cannot go there again. It is awful. It's too dark. It's too bad. Wow. Like that's so, and so that is, I mean, it can happen at any time. Seriously, human beings are human beings, but that we do that's generally, a lot of counselors find that is the reality, that it's like, I don't want to. And so now in that sense, it humbles me to know that I can't rely on me. It can't be on me. It's like every once in a while I'll start feeling like, oh man, that's what that felt like, you know, and there'll be a day where I just feel it. And I'll be like, oh Jesus, like we can't go there again. Like I want, and so we get like just giving it over to him yet again and saying like, in the past, I would have just wanted to solve it. Now, I know the only way to solve it is by saying, it's yours. I'm surrendering it.
Right.
And so
to think that we can handle it all on our own is pride. And pride is a deadly sin for a reason, because it can lead to our demise spiritually and physically in some cases, if you do decide to take your own life, for example. You said some really beautiful things, Father, and I mean, the conversation's been great, and we're getting towards the end here. I have a bit of a random question, but I know people have brought this up to me before, and you know, we spoke about how we can want things badly and ask God to just do this thing for us, make this happen. In some cases, it can be, you can ask for a thing that maybe isn't so good. Maybe, hey, I want fame, I want money, I want success. Is it possible to get assistance from the devil if you ask for it? You hear about famous artists supposedly selling their souls to the devil in exchange for worldly goods and pleasures. Is that a thing that can even be done?
Sure.
And I'll leave it there first.
Okay. You know, first, the evil one is real, right? And so there is, and I would give this over to a moral theologian to correct anything that I would say that like, well, he needs some tweaking or just some distinguishing there. But I'm going to go off of the theology that I know off the top of my head. The evil one is real, right? The evil one is real, and that God is real, all of this stuff. I can hand over my will to the evil one in a similar way, right? Like, and so here, this is like the balancing act of all of this, right? The evil one has no power in the presence of God, right? Like if I so at any point, sometimes people say like, I will be cursed until the end of time because of something that I did, right? Like all we have to do, God, like we can't give those kind of things more power than they actually have, because if we give it, God overcomes all of that, right? It might mean that there's healing that needs to be done, but so to answer the question, yes, like we can hand over our will to the evil one in particular ways, and things can happen, but we can't give that more power than it has, because sometimes people hold on to that forever, right? Like, and they just continue to hold on to those things and say, I'll never be free of this. I'll be cursed the rest of my life. This thing that I did, I gave my soul over to the devil. That would all need to be distinguished, like I give my soul to the evil one. Like, all you have to do again is in that sense, this is where we get into exorcism stuff and all that kind of stuff. And there's a lot more tweaking and distinguishing that would need to be done. But for instance, right, like, let me use this analogy. This might help, or example. Recently I received from a parishioner that wasn't theirs, but they were trying, what do I do with all of this? They had discovered in a house a number of different witchcraft symbols. There was, all these different images,
the pentagrams,
all of those. And they gave me a number of these things, and I was like, oh shoot, I don't know, I was kind of nervous with this, so I called up someone that I know who is an exorcist, and asked them. I'm like, hey, this is kind of scary stuff, like, what am I doing with this? And he kind of told me what to do, but he says, and it was one of the things he made very clear. He says, don't let this stuff have more power than it actually does. Pray with it, burn it all, holy water, all this stuff, like in the presence of God, like just offer this to God, right? God is infinitely more power. The evil one is still a creation in the reality of things, right? So he has no ability to overcome God. So yes, do these things have power if we let them have some power? Certainly they can, right? The evil one does have power if we allow our will, yet again, to be turned over to him. But we can't let it go beyond the fact that, hey, I can still turn back to God, and my will can be turned right back to God, and God's grace can still overcome very easily.
The soul is never fully sold.
Absolutely.
Right. It's not even ours to sell anyway, I guess.
Exactly.
All right.
So, yeah. Anyway, a lot more could be said about that, but that's a little bit on that.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Well, Father Adam, the conversation's been riveting. I could go longer than this. I really could, but for the sake of, people listening who want to listen to the whole thing, we better not make it 3 hours.
All right.
But again, I just want to say, thank you sincerely. The conversation's been great, and I think people are really going to learn a lot from it and take great inspiration from it. It's really cool that you're willing to come on and have this type of conversation with me, so thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
It is my pleasure. Father Adam, appreciate the time.
God bless you. Thank you.
My pleasure. All right. That's a wrap, everyone. Thank you so much.